and then are in pickleball, so.
They're your work, right?
Mm-hmm. Are we ready?
Ready? I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee meeting to order. Please note for the record, Alderman Arnett is present and Alderman Chandler-Meyer is not. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move with two amendments. One is to remove the appointment AP 1024 of Patrick Hogan and add the appointment AP 4724 Nadine Chen.
Okay, I'll second that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approval of the minutes from the July 12th meeting.
Madam Chair, I would like to raise an issue with the minutes with regard to the recording of the minutes on the council vote on 0324. I think if you look at the summary in the minutes, which I will try to find here, the summary of the minutes says that the Rules Committee made an amendment, Rules Amendment Summary, A, position must be vacant or temporary for 6 months, and then C, I don't know why it's not B, council may not make a nomination for any board, commission, or committee where state law specifically says the appointment needs to be made by the municipal executive. I think that is correct, but when you go down to the actual showing of the amendment, it has an addition to the combined amendment C, which is in blue, indicating that it came from the Office of Law, and that reads differently than the summary. It says City Council shall not have the authority to make nominations to the Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, or any other board, commission, or committee that Maryland law specifies shall be made by the mayor, who is the city's local executive. I had the Office of Law check the state code. The only thing in state code, and I have brought an exhibit prepared for me by Cynthia Reuter, thank goodness for her, that says that for the Planning Commission only, if there is a single elected local executive, the members of the Planning Commission shall be appointed by the local executive and confirmed by the legislative body. My point is the minutes are inconsistent within the minutes and incorrect with this Amendment C.
Could I see your document for a moment?
This one?
No, the one with the blue?
Yes.
Because I think the first question for me is the blue. And Ms. Reuter, that's why we asked for you to be here. The exception on page 2 in blue is what is inconsistent with, 1, what we did, and 2, with state law. So my question is, where does this come from? It's not our amendment.
It was in Savage Amendment 1, but added by the Office of Law. It wasn't from Alderman Savage, and that's why at the committee I moved Alderman Savage Amendment 2, which did not have that C section added.
So this should not have been added, period, because this was Amendment 1 that was defeated in the committee, or we've approved Amendment 2 and not approved, we didn't address Amendment 1, I think is what we did.
So Amendment 1 was the change that said we are going to abide by state law. Amendment 2 is Alderman Savage's changes dealing with when the council, it's a timeline about when the council can nominate somebody. So that was changed in Amendment 2.
Do you have,
So
Amendment 1 says it's not attached.
I know. We can't find it.
So where is,
Now, Amendment 1 was sponsored by Alderman Savage.
That's
Alderman-
correct.
Right. Alderman Savage requested that that amendment, his sponsored amendment, be withdrawn. He wasn't going to offer it anymore.
Right.
Okay.
So it was gone. Now, the committee, when you met on this, the committee agreed to combine 1 and 2. And that's the amendment number 3, the committee version.
But what I specifically offered was Savage Amendment 1 and Savage Amendment 2. Savage Amendment 1 did not include C, the section that is the controversial section. That was disavowed by Alderman Savage. That was added by the Office of Law. And that is not something that Alderman Savage nor I agreed to, since I'm co-sponsor of this legislation.
What-
So
I asked Alderman Savage if he'd be willing to sponsor it. At the time, he said yes, and then he reconsidered. And
because he saw
withdrew his
this
support.
addition of C.
But C isn't in his amendment. C is in the Finlayson amendment, which is 3. It's not
That's
the
the committee
Savage
amendment.
amendment.
Right. So when we agreed to combine Savage Amendments 1 and 2, what I was offering was the Savage Amendments, not the amendment which was added by the Office of Law, which Alderman Savage withdrew his Amendment 1 because he didn't agree with what is offered by the Office of Law. However, the Office of Law, through Cynthia, did research. That's why this land use code, and it is the case that in land use, the mayor and only the mayor can select somebody to be on the planning commission. It does not cover any of these others in here, and it's missing the building board of appeals. Doesn't cover any of those others. So it's only the planning commission. That's why I said I would like to make a motion to reconsider 03 to get all of this straightened out. And I understand it's being pulled off the agenda for Monday night, or maybe it was.
It's
it was
not
never-
on the agenda.
Wasn't on the agenda. So I will make a motion later on in the committee meeting to reconsider 0324 to get this straightened out.
Well, and since it's not on the agenda for Monday, we can put it back on the agenda for the next Rules Committee meeting. I guess my question and concern is, the Law Department has recommended C in the Finlayson amendment. But then we get a law that is contradictory to that.
No, the C conforms to the state requirements that there are certain bodies that the membership must be appointed by the mayor.
Right, the Planning Commission.
That's it.
The Building Board of Appeals is
No.
not
Yes,
part of
the
that?
C does not designate which committees it is.
Yes, it does. That's the important part about it.
It says the Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, and any other board, commission, or committee,
Right.
et
So
cetera.
C is correct only in that the planning commission is the sole province of the local executive to appoint. Nobody else can do that.
With further research, Board of Appeals also has
It's
it.
also in the land use article, it says the same, says.
You didn't find that yesterday, but you found it.
I didn't, it was in a different article than what I was looking in.
It doesn't have a
All
section.
right, so,
Well, I think we need to send this back.
yeah.
And have it clarified, because there is some misunderstanding. And we know that we have to conform to the Maryland code. We just need to make sure, first of all, that the recommendations to the aldermen are in compliance. Because I'm not sure whose amendment this is. It says the Finlayson amendment, but it's not.
That is the amendment as the committee agreed to at the last meeting where they considered this bill.
Combining Savage 1 and 2.
Correct.
But this is 3 that we're talking about that has C added. That's the problem.
Right, that's the combo
Yeah.
amendment.
Savage rejected Amendment 1 because of C. And so I thought we were doing only the Savage Amendment, not Savage Amendment as embellished by the Office of Law.
But the second Savage Amendment is now the Finlayson Amendment, which is the Rules Committee Amendment.
Right, but
Which-
it also has
Right.
C in it.
Right. So that's what needs to be clarified.
But you need C in order for this to
Not
be,
all of C, but that's why we need to send it back for reconsideration
Yeah.
by this committee.
okay.
You don't see that it's not in compliance?
It is in compliance.
It exceeds what's required.
No, I will find the other boards, when I have more time to research this and go back and find them. And I will get you the boards that
So we
must be
need
appointed
that.
by the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alderman, do you want to make a motion to reconsider our actions on 0324?
Well, right now, approval of the minutes is,
Oh, that's right, we haven't gotten any further than that, I'm
and I
sorry.
would recommend that we need to amend the minutes. I would ask that we postpone approving the minutes to our next meeting until we can clear this up.
Okay, I'll second that. And then we can take
And then-
the action to reconsider
And then,
after.
I don't know when it's going to be appropriate, but I would, make a motion that we reconsider 0324 until we can get everything straightened out.
I would do that after the appointments
Okay.
and before general discussion.
All right?
Okay, Ms. Jackson, are you with us? Okay, so moving on to appointments and reappointments. Ms. Raftovich, you're on. We have 5 to consider today.
Thank you. Yes, we have 5 reappointments to consider today, and I am here to speak on their
6,
behalf.
isn't
Sorry,
it?
Hillary Raftovich,
Took one off. Oh,
Boards and
Yeah, but we
Commissions
had one more.
Coordinator.
you're right.
The first is Barbara Torian. Barbara is the Ward 4 representative to the Arts and Public Places Commission. She leads the gallery program for that commission. She has, her degree is in arts and culture. She has also worked in arts most of her life. She's been on the board since 2015, so a longstanding member of the board. She's a regular contributor and volunteers at many of their events. That board does have a lot of volunteer hours involved in it outside of the actual meetings. And she also has a lot of volunteer experience in Annapolis and other communities where she's lived.
And she's a lovely person.
And she's a lovely person.
And she's a former student.
There you go.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of appointment AP 624.
And of course, I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And she's still at the Library of Congress, right?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Library of Congress.
All right, thank you very much. Next.
For the Civil Service Board, we have Leona Tartaski. Sorry about that. And she is a newer member on that board. She's been there since 2019. And she is an HR professional. She has MS in Education and MSW from University of Maryland, Baltimore. And she is a member of the National Association of Social Workers. She's been an active member on that board. That board, as you're probably aware, meets intermittently as needed for things like approving new civil service positions. So they're not one of the regular meeting boards, but when they do meet, it's very important work. And was highly recommended by the HR director as well.
Madam Chair, I think she's overqualified and we should read. What is a MSW?
Masters in Social Work.
Okay.
I thought you honed in on that because we need that in the city.
We do.
Yes.
I recommend we approve reappointment.
And I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. May I ask how many vacancies are on Civil Service
I
Board?
think I have 2 vacancies. I do have one pending a person for that board, though.
And what's a quorum?
3, which is the current.
Okay, so
The
everybody's
current,
got to be there. in
3
order
out of
to
4
do it.
is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, 3 out of 5, it's a small board.
Okay, thank you. Next,
The next is Mr. David Blyden for the Ethics Commission. He has been on the board since 2012. Mr. Blyden is a former judge for the Maryland Tax Court. He is an attorney. He was the executive director of the Maryland Association of Counties. He is also a very active member of that board, and he's knowledgeable, and he's done good work on that board, and was recommended, by both the chair and staff to the board.
And he made the dean's list the same year I did.
would you like to also make a motion?
Recommend approval.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. AP 924.
924 is Mr. Christian Zazali. He is a resident of Ward 2, Admiral Heights, and he is a registered voter. This is the only board that requires that in the city, so I have to say that he is a registered voter. And he's been on the board since 2011. Mr. Zazali is a builder. He's a project manager for a builder, and he is LEED certified as well, which brings that environmental perspective that is important on that board. And he has been a long-serving member, and he was recommended by both chair and staff for reappointment.
Okay.
And by my observation, he brings a lot of institutional memory to that board, which I think is one of our strongest boards. So I would move that we recommend approval.
I'll second that. I was looking, so he's been on since 2011. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, AP 1024, we removed from the agenda.
Postpone, yeah.
AP 1124.
AP 1124 is Ms. Chrissa Rich. She is the Ward 5 representative on the Arts and Public Places Board. She is also a museum professional with over 25 years in federal government and community service. She's very active in her community. She's a Greenscape volunteer and also one of the members that you see out at AIPPC events on a regular basis doing the work. She has lots of great ideas. I actually was able to have a phone conversation with her today. And she's been a very steady member on that board through challenging times.
I wish you could read my mind. I watched the last meeting.
Yes.
The last 2 meetings, and they were very unsettling, to say the least.
On a side note, I've scheduled a training for them for their next meeting. So we'll be doing a refresh on some training with that board.
Okay, well, good.
Yes, it is unsettled, but she's excellent. I move that we recommend approval.
Okay, I'll second that. And she's in Ward 5?
Yes, Ward 5.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and the last appointment is
Nadine.
AP 47,
Nadine Chen.
Nadine Chen.
Ms. Chen is a resident of Ward 8, and she's been on the board since 2019. She has her law degree as well as a PhD, an MA, and a BS. So she's done all her degrees,
Right.
and a couple of extras. She's currently an adjunct professor at University of Maryland School of Law, and she's been an excellent member on this board. She is very active in her community with all of her volunteer experience, starting with the word Eastport. She is Eastport Civic Association, Eastport Yacht Club, and Eastport Democratic Club. So she's very Eastport-centric. And
Well, she's in Ward 8, right? So
she's
that
in
would
Ward
make
8.
sense.
She's in
Yeah.
Eastport. Yes.
Okay, Alderman?
I move that we recommend approval of Nadine Chen.
Okay, I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thank you very
Rafterich.
much.
Appreciate it. And that takes us to, before we go into general discussion, I apologize, gentlemen, I just want to take care of this
All right.
committee business. Alderman, I will entertain a motion to reconsider 0324.
So moved.
And I'm not sure whether you have to give reasoning,
Well,
but
we have confusion of matters of law, and we need to get it straightened out.
okay. And the minutes not accurately depicting what happened at the last
They're
meeting.
conflicting, but also I think there's some information in the actual amendment wording that we need to get straightened out, as we witnessed by earlier discussion today.
Exactly. So I'll second that. All in favor of moving to reconsider 0324, please say. I am going to do that next. So Aye. And so I'm asking Ms. Jackson to make sure she puts 0324 back on our agenda for the next meeting. And I would ask you to make sure that the law department has worked out the glitches in the amendments. So we have one clear path forward with this.
Can I make one other comment, Madam Chair?
Sure.
So I'm finding it disturbing that in the city charter, Article 4, the council delegates its land use authority to the planning commission and the planning director. But from what we're learning today, it may also be the case that we don't have authority to make, we can approve appointments, but not make appointments to the Building Board of Appeals or the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that really gives us, and I do have legislation that's coming to the council to give some place for the alderpersons to represent their ward in land use. And the legislation is complicated. It makes us ex officio members of the Building Board of Appeals and the Zoning Board of Appeals for non-voting ex officio members for matters that are affecting our ward or wards if it's more than one ward. I think this is something, and I have talked to the Director of Planning and Zoning, we really need to have a bigger think about this. We cannot have the elected officials representing all of the residents of the city have no direct status in land use decisions. I don't say we should be approving authorities, I would not. And in fact, I think the council took itself out of this business because they did not want to have long meetings like the Planning Commission and the Boards of Appeals and the Zoning Board of Appeal. They didn't have the patience for that, but I think they took out too much. In fact, what I really asked for was that we just go back to the charter and amend that subsection in Article 4, powers and duties of the council to retain the power to present, only present, at these various boards and commissions, not be ex officio, not be part of it. So there will be legislation coming forward, but this is also another way that the council can get back into having some role in land use in the city.
We are fortunate. We have Mr. Jakubiec at the, you can take that one right there, Mr. Jakubiec, if you could come up, because I have a question for you. Since this falls in your department, I think we would look to you for some guidance also. I think you may have an idea what the alderman is talking about as far as the alderman having standing.
Right.
And how we can best remedy the problem that we're having.
Well, first of all, if you recognize it as a problem, maybe you don't want us there.
I recognize the topic because the alderman has mentioned this to me in a phone call several weeks ago, and on other occasions. I think Alderman Arnett, you've mentioned it, and I recognize the issue and the problem from multiple other jurisdictions, candidly, so I have that perspective. But I've not really thought through a response to this question, or really how it would be administered within our context of Annapolis's practice, historical, or its current zoning codes. But I would be delighted to dig into this, and even independently or with you all or with others. It's an important topic, and I know that you and I have had occasion to wonder out loud, why weren't you informed of an application when it reached a certain critical point? And you were the elected official from that district, which is a valid point. And we didn't even think about it because we're so busy in pursuing, applying the code. We didn't even think. But if you were obviously made part of that in a formal structure, you obviously would have been more engaged in that because we would have had to. So I'm happy to dig into this at your direction and coordinate with the mayor's office as under his direction too, to provide some content, whatever you want.
I didn't ask, I'm not looking for an answer today.
Okay,
I'd like for you to, I'm putting it on your radar.
fair enough.
And you've heard from both of us and probably others. So how can we remedy what we perceive as an issue of standing for the council members?
Okay.
And
I'll send you both the draft legislation. It's not ready for prime time yet, but I think it shows you the torturous way that is being thought about.
well, and I would look to Mr. Jakubiak to give us some guidance on the best
One of his
approach.
strengths is he has so much experience with other jurisdictions. That's why I was delighted to have him as our director. And other people may well have the right solution, other jurisdictions.
And he did mention that briefly just a moment ago, and I was going to say, you've already had some experience, or a lot of experience maybe, so.
This is one of those classic questions. Be careful what you ask for, and how much is enough.
Yes, so, and I would hope that you could come to give us a recommendation before we labor with it, and then have to go back and, I'd like your professional opinion up front. So, but that's not a timeline
Okay.
necessarily.
But he has so much leisure time.
I know he does, and we
have
want to
to tell
fill it
you-
up with all kinds of other stuff. No, we don't.
I've probably seen Mr. Jakubiak every day for the last 2 weeks at a board meeting or some other thing. I mean, he
Don't
is,
you realize that August was our month off?
yeah, well, it wasn't
Didn't you
mine,
tell
but-
him that?
No, I did not.
Look, you
tried to keep
you have
me
to
away.
step up to some of these aldermen, because they can take up every bit of your time if you don't. Just kidding.
Can we record that, please? Get a copy of that.
It's recorded, it's live.
Okay, very good.
I said it, I stand behind it.
I will
Fair
add,
is fair.
I will add, I was meeting with a very active city attorney this morning, and one of the things he said to me is planning and zoning needs more current planning staff and more enforcement staff. And I've
We've
been
heard
singing
that.
that song for a
We've
long
heard
time.
that.
And a
Maybe
lot of-
we'll listen.
A lot of the pressure I think they're under is there's just so much they have to do, and it's really something where we're overloading our employees with a lot of responsibility and controversial things that everybody has an opinion, whether you're a developer or a resident, and we're just not giving them the resources they need to deal with things properly.
Maybe we could come up with a strategy for delineating types of projects. And I don't want to say capping, but if you have five projects in a certain category, you're tapped out for staff.
Wow.
And you can add another one once you get another one off of your plate, kind of thing, I know, but this is the union person, I guess, in me also saying, we cannot continue, and you've heard me say this 100 times.
And I agree.
You can't continue to add stuff to already full plates. I mean, we can't, no matter how much we want to. And I know we're the culprits, but we have to control ourselves. So something else on your plate, Mr.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so going on to general discussion, We have taken care of 03. It's going to be on the next agenda. Okay. So under general discussion, Mr. Gov't?
Okay, and before I start, I'll allow my counterpart, who's actually the busiest man in planning and zoning, introduce himself.
Stephen Rice, Economic Development Manager.
And I'm Chris Jakubiak, Planning and Zoning Director. And it's good to be here on this topic. Back in October 2021, the City Council passed Ordinance 02521. And there were a number of amendments to that ordinance that were incorporated into the document. One amendment, Amendment 19.
May I interrupt you because it's not attached? Do you have, oh, this is it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Can we get it electronically also, please?
Well, sure, yeah. So what you have there, by the way, is a kind of a cover sheet that describes a little bit about the work group that we're going to talk about. And then Amendment 19 on the second page, then the original or the signed copy of 02521. I know you're familiar with those documents. The top document is the only new thing that we're talking about today. But while we're on Amendment 19, I just wanted to point out, and for folks who may be watching, that at the time that 02521 was adopted, Amendment 19 to that was adopted, and it was never codified into the code. It was never made part of the code. And it makes sense because it's not really a regulation or code provision, but it's a directive to the planning director to form a work group to analyze the impacts of the legislation on small maritime operators. And that happened during COVID. It may have fell by the wayside. Actually, I worked here in the office for maybe 9 months before I realized this was even an item, and it was just through deliberations, coordination with staff and attorneys and other folks that it came to light that this amendment actually existed. So once we realized it existed, we said, well, let's fulfill the obligation under it. And so while we're kind of approaching this a little late, it's still a valid research effort. And so in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to review what the work group is going to be composed of and what our focus is and our timeline. But just to distill this, we want a focused group of people who are engaged in small maritime business in Annapolis to advise us, the staff, so that we can advise the Maritime Advisory Committee and the City Council on what the actual operators are encountering, so that we can assess what the impacts are on those businesses and those operations, and then better inform you to make policies that may be necessary. This task force is not about rewriting the maritime legislation. We're not rewriting 02521. We're not spending our time working on language. It's about a thoughtful, candid assessment of the bill and how it impacts smaller operations. And if the council wants to take it in different directions, that's entirely your prerogative. And that's how we're approaching this. But we want to stay focused and deliver a work product in a relatively short time to you. But before it gets to you, we want to take it through the Maritime Advisory Committee, and they can formulate their own recommendations on it, whether they bless it or they have other content they'd like to share with you on the questions.
Well, may I ask, on the
Yes.
first page, these are already the participants?
Yes, these are.
So you already have begun this process?
Yes, we have the task force formed, and we've got dates scheduled, and we have a mission statement, and folks are on board. Yep. So we're not here asking for your guidance. We're here just to report to you that we've made progress and we've achieved our objective, and we're on target to conduct this task force through the fall this year.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. The objective is going to be to determine how to effectively impose what was in the legislation from the small business owner's perspective.
What's
that
more
make
to
sense?
understand how the small businesses have been impacted,
Oh, how they have been.
how they've been impacted by the
Or not.
by the legislation, or how they're dealing with it or managing it. And that may bring up related questions like, what's the best way to enforce this? What's the best way to seek and obtain information on the amount of non-maritime uses within the various marinas and things like that? But it's really about what they view as the impact of that legislation on their operations.
Okay. Did you have a question before we go?
No,
Mr. Rice?
Steve, you want to?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rice?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add, but I will just formally read the purpose. The purpose of this working group is to discuss the impact of City Council Ordinance 02521 on small maritime operations and submit recommendations to the Annapolis Maritime Advisory Board for their review. The participants who have agreed to participate in this effort include Jennifer Kay of Schooner Woodwind, Sean Owen of Chronic Sailing Charter, Chris Sajoli of Chesapeake Dockside Services, Ryan Copeland of Annapolis Landing Marina, Seth Lehrer of Horn Point Harbor Marina, Wendy Madden of M Yacht Services, and Michael Tomasini of Pirate Adventures, who would be the Maritime Advisory Board's liaison to this effort. The planned dates for this group are Tuesday, September 24th, Tuesday, October 15th, and Tuesday, October 29th. All of the meeting times are at 5:30 p.m. And the focus of the first meeting would be a discussion of 02521 and how it has obviously impacted small maritime businesses. The focus of the second meeting would be a discussion of possible solutions and recommendations. And the focus of the third meeting would be centered around enforcement of the ordinance. So.
Okay, how were the participants selected?
Well, we received some recommendations. Some folks volunteered. We also pulled from our economic gardening cohort that we had. So it was a combination of different things. Okay. We also wanted to make sure, to the best of our ability, that we had representation from different, zoning districts and so forth, and a somewhat diverse set of maritime businesses.
And we did our best with that, and not everybody was able to do it. But we feel that once the recommendations are formulated, by taking them through the Maritime Advisory Committee, we have another kind of way of getting more input into our findings, and then filtering that to you. So we feel like we're going to get a good, broad representation of issues.
Are others still invited to participate? Not that I have anybody in mind or anything. I just, if somebody comes up and says, well, I want to be a part, I guess my concern is people jumping in after the ship has left port.
Yeah, I can answer this. Yeah, this is a task force that is closed in terms of membership, but the meetings are open. And we're going to abide by open meetings law, so people will have a chance to offer comments, and the meetings will be, they're all virtual. Anyone from anywhere can participate and be part of the meetings. But we wanted a working group that is coherent, that can work together as a team and come up with recommendations.
I think that's a good approach. Alderman, you have a question?
So I was going to ask the same question about the meetings. By virtual, that means they're being done on Zoom or something like that. So the experience that we've been finding is, if somebody's watching it virtual and wants to ask a question or make a comment, I think they have to sign up in advance for our IT people to be able to let them do that. So while we're saying the meetings are open, there are technical complications with being virtual that may not mean they're open. I'm not advocating necessarily. I don't want to add this to my agenda,
Right.
but I am interested in what it's doing. And the nice part about virtual is it means it's recorded. So even if you can't be there, you can go back and look at it.
Sure.
But I'm not sure virtual and open are the same thing.
Right. And you know, me and my aim has been trying to get every possible meeting public in person. But on this particular group, it seemed like membership could be best achieved by having it virtual. But I was asking Stephen how we handle it on the Maritime Advisory Committee and some of our other committees that are entirely virtual. Many of our task force are entirely virtual. So we'll see if we can facilitate that.
Stephen comes to those meetings and gives a briefing every time.
Yeah.
May I ask, with Zoom, we don't have the option of letting those who are viewing to send in questions. You know, some of my other organizations, we have a Zoom meeting and it's a chat. And so people can ask questions that way. And even though they can't be live, you know, actively engaged, their question could be asked for the participants. So do we have that option, or is that something? Well, do they have to be? I'm just trying to get to.
Part of the public record, so we can have record of it. It does have to be record.
What does it mean if it has to become part of the public record? I mean, I know what that means, but why wouldn't we want their questions to be part of the public meeting?
He said that's the office of law question.
It's the Office of Law question. So we want the Office of Law to ask us, if we can't use the chat as a way for people to ask questions, then how can we do that? Not no, but how? Please.
They can submit their questions in the public comment. Do you all have a public comment?
Is there a public comment forum available during these meetings?
We'll check with the media folks and see what they have planned and what's possible.
Okay.
Okay, Stevie and Chris.
So I
Thank
will
you.
tell you from my own experience, and I do go to a lot of meetings of the boards and commissions, but oftentimes my questions aren't formulated until I hear what they're talking about, what they're saying. And that was my complaint under COVID when we were doing everything virtually, including all of our zoning board and building board of appeals, is or planning commission meetings, you don't really know what you would like to ask. But that really speaks to how productive a truly open meeting could be. And quite frankly, I'm kind of inclined to say to you, have them virtual, have them recorded, but let the committee do its work without interruption from people like me.
Yeah.
Who will have a lot of questions and disrupt the flow of the meeting. So I would be careful about saying they're open. Virtual, great. Recorded, great. Ability to accept questions after the meeting for the next meeting, that probably is sufficient.
Right.
Because my last question is going to be, I think I know, but the one thing that's not on this list is deliverable, and I assume it's going to be a report from the work and the findings of the committee that will then come to the Maritime Advisory and presumably the council as well.
Yeah, I think you presume right. We expect some type of technical memo or report to be the product coming to you.
Alderman, the point I was trying to make was to give them access to asking questions, not after the fact. And that submittal form, if it's available, that they could, after hearing the discussion, could then have access to that form and shoot their question in, not having to wait.
But are you talking about live, real time?
Yeah.
See, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and if it was a meeting like here, and they would have a public meeting comment period, but it really hasn't worked. Unless you submit your questions ahead of time, which is the process that has been used, and there's a deadline, usually you have to submit them by noon of the meeting date. If you don't know what your question is until you hear what they're talking about. So my sense of making this work is that the questions, if you take the effort to attend the virtual meeting or watch the virtual meeting, I think if we make it a provision that for the next meeting, they can ask questions, submit questions at any time along. But I just have doubts that, we can always try it. We do it with all the other ones, so there's nothing wrong with doing it. But I'm also concerned about interrupting the meeting, the work group meeting, and the flow of it as all these live questions are coming in.
Well, that's a management issue, whether we would accept the questions, whether somebody would have to screen the questions to make sure they're appropriate for the subject that's on the table at the time.
I think we should assign that to Alderman Schaldemeyer.
Since it's his legislation.
Because he's not here.
Hi, Mr. Kubiak.
So our thinking is here on this that these individuals live very busy lives and are doing the work that sustain Annapolis as a maritime community. We don't want to impose added burdens onto them. They're experts in their field, but they're not experts in running public meetings. We want to create a forum where we can learn from them as much as possible in the short time we have. And so we're going to sort of create that forum. We want to assemble a group, and they're going to need as much background and research as anybody on the code and the provisions and the details. It's a complicated set of standards and triggers and incentives, and there's going to be a lot of communication from us to the group before they are able to begin understanding what the impacts are to their businesses in a kind of really detailed way. So obviously we don't want the members here to feel compelled like an administrative board would be, to have to answer to the public. But they're doing us a favor, and we want to create the right forum for them. But the Maritime Advisory Committee is a little more formalized group, and that provides a forum for further public discussion of this group's written findings. So we imagine a layered approach to this. Getting from this detailed practitioners up to the more policy-oriented folks.
And then I presume the report will come to the council, but be managed by this committee. In fact, two of the sponsors of the resolution are on this committee, and Alderman Schaldemeyer was a person who was quite vocal during the deliberations on 2521 about concerns for the small marinas. So, and we can announce that this will be discussed and that we will allow public comment. So I understand your point and actually agree with your point, except I'm not sure how practical it would be.
And I'm not wedded to it. I just thought I heard a problem and trying to find a solution for it. But if it's not really a problem, we don't need a solution for it. So I'm good. I'm good. So any other questions?
Well, I would like to ask that you, it would be good to talk about in this one pager that the meetings will be virtual and recorded, and it would be good to add a bold thing saying deliverable, and I think the deliverable is pretty simple and straightforward. It'll be a report from the committee on their findings and recommendations. So I think that would fill out this page nicely. And then the question is, there are a lot of people interested in this. How are we going to promulgate this one pager? I have had questions from many people, including Sept, among others, but also Mr. Dales this morning about what's happening with this. So I think it would be good to complete this page and promulgate it in some way.
Okay.
Would it be appropriate to attach this to the Rules Committee meeting minutes?
Yeah, we
I mean,
could
you're
do
presenting
that.
it now into the record for us,
Yeah.
so if
Could we
you'd
get
like to update this based on the recommendations, and we'll attach it to the minutes.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's interested in
Good, and
knowing the plan,
we can also attach it to the planning and zoning website as well, with a little box that allows people to track the findings and the work of this group. Yep.
terrific.
Okay.
Anything else you gentlemen would like to add?
We might take a break for ice cream today over in planning and zoning, so
Sheila hasn't had anything to eat yet today. So.
No,
So-
I had a Starbucks this morning. I had a 5 a.m. flight back to BWI from Milwaukee, so.
yeah.
So anyway, it's all
Welcome
good.
back.
But yeah, I think I want more than ice cream at this point. So I love ice cream. So, but anyway, it's a short meeting. It's only been an hour, so
I
that's
know.
a good thing. So
I
you
know.
guys probably have an hour or so that you thought you'd be sitting here.
Right.
And so thank you for everything. Alderman, are we good?
I move we adjourn.
I second that emotion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.